We're back.
It wouldn't be an episode without that starting. Episode 17, another big topic.
Yeah.
You like to cover all the big topics, the hot topics. Today, intermittent fasting, something's close to your heart. You've actually done it yourself for a long period of time.
Yep, close to my heart. I wouldn't say a long period of time in the context, but some people do fasting for much longer than I have, but I love it. And, a lot of people are interested in it because, what's a better diet than not eating anything at all?
It sounds simple. Air. Just eat air. There's heaps of different ways to look at intermittent fasting and heaps of different methods. So we'll jump into some of those. We will take some listener questions. We'll also look at some of the latest sports topics. There's some juicy things happening in sport. And then we'll go over the game picks from last week and then pick some new picks for this coming week or the next couple of weeks.
Somebody's going to have a dry scoop of Shred Matrix.
Really? We'll see. You'll soon find out who it is. It's either me, you, or Hal.
What?
Yeah, you've been included in this now. We've decided if it's a draw between us, you have to take the scoop.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Someone has to do it.
Cool. You can't see me on camera anyway, so I'll just
sweet.
pretend.
We'll believe you.
Intermittent fasting, let's jump into it.
Yeah.
It's pretty popular. Why do you think it's become popular in the last year or so?
I think, why it's become popular, probably some high-profile podcasts, Joe Rogan has had a few guests on there.
Musashi R&D Sessions.
Musashi, we're talking about it now. It's about to explode. Intermittent fasting is really fascinating. And, because it's got a cool buzzword name, it sounds trendy. And, some high-profile athletes have said that's their method of dieting.
Who?
So, I think, George St. Pierre, for one. We've spoken to Rob Whitaker about his diet. He implements some form of intermittent fasting as well.
And there's a lot of sort of Muslim athletes that are sort of forced by religion to do fasting as well. One of the best fighters on the planet, Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Yeah.
Pronounce that well. He does sort of forced fasting through Ramadan.
Yeah, and it's across all sports. You see this in football, for example. Every year, a lot of players play while fasting for Ramadan as well.
So heaps of different types of fasting. So where did this concept come from? Is it like an ancient thing where we would sort of hunt for a period of time, feast, and then between the next kill we would be forced to fast as humans? Or
yeah, I guess evolutionarily, every single one of our ancestors would have practiced fasting involuntarily at some point. Just feeling hungry is a form of fasting.
Mm-hmm.
Every night everybody undergoes an overnight fast. While you're sleeping, you're not eating. So it's essentially part of our life. There's also I guess a big spiritual aspect to fasting. Monks, a lot of religions prescribe it. There's the meditative aspect of fasting, which might sound a bit gimmicky, but it's a big part of it, I think.
Well, I think it is, and it is definitely the people that I've spoken to that have done it. It's definitely a bit of a challenge of the mind when you're like, food is so accessible to us these days, and we're so used to eating or snacking every few hours, and then you take that away, even like for a short fasting period, and people start to go a little bit mental initially until they sort of get into the groove of it. But it is definitely, it can be a spiritual thing.
Yeah.
It can be a battle of the mind.
And, Miyamoto Musashi actually talked about it. One of his principles in the way of walking alone was do not pursue the taste of good food. But, looking into a bit deeper, he was involved in some Buddhist spirituality stuff back in the day. And I think he practiced intermittent fasting. We don't have his diet records from the 1600s. I'm sure.
Is that what he said when you had a chat to him, or?
Yeah, in my samurai dreams.
So these days, though, why are people incorporating intermittent fasting? What would be the main few reasons?
Well, I guess the number one reason people are looking at it is probably weight loss. There is some success that you can achieve from intermittent fasting for weight loss, and it's a good tool to enable this. But how how this weight loss happens in your body, the question is still unanswered. Is it purely from this calorie restriction, because you're not eating 24 hours a day or typically 3 meals a day like a normal person would? You're actually imparting a caloric restriction on your body, which is the foundation to all weight loss. But then there are all these other metabolic effects which the jury's still out on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I know we'll jump into some of the science behind it, Is this a fad? Is it already dying off? Is it gaining momentum?
I think we're at the early stages of something big, a massive tool for not just weight loss, but for all kinds of, all kinds of therapies. There's a lot of medical interest in intermittent fasting. Actually, I've got a paper here. I'll just read it out. It's from the New England Journal of Medicine. So basically, the most powerful journal in the world.
Yep.
Okay, I'll just read the conclusion. Preclinical studies.
Read the whole study.
Oh, okay.
No. So is this like health-related benefit?
Yeah,
Like,
so
conclusion, yep.
this paper, it was a big review, December last year. It's called Effects of Intermittent Fasting on Health, Aging, and Disease. Conclusions. Preclinical studies and clinical trials have shown that intermittent fasting has broad spectrum benefits for many health conditions, such as obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancers, and neurologic disorders. Animal models show that intermittent fasting improves health throughout the lifespan, whereas clinical studies have mainly involved relatively short-term interventions over periods of months. So, it's not just about a weight loss tool. There are all these other benefits that can arise from intermittent fasting.
The anti-aging thing interests me.
Yeah, so currently,
Of course it does.
Yeah. Well,
Well-
I'm approaching the end of my life, so
Yeah.
I sort of want to prolong it, the inevitable.
Well, if you're still alive by the time this podcast airs,
That's 50-50, yeah.
50-50 chats. Well, the number one tool that humans have right now for extending lifespan in animals at least is caloric restriction, right? If you make animals eat less, they live longer. So there's been a whole bunch of intermittent fasting experiments done on animals, and a lot of this can't really be extrapolated to humans because
We're animals.
we're animals, but we're complicated animals.
We definitely overeat.
Yeah, we definitely do. But using intermittent fasting as a tool to increase this calorie deficit, or alternatively, is it all these other cool benefits that intermittent fasting does to your body, which we'll talk about soon.
So as far as intermittent fasting, there's different. So we all probably understand the core principle. There's a period where you fast, so you restrain from food.
Yeah.
Are any foods allowed in that time at all? Like I've seen people that do it that have like coffee and things like that, but yeah.
We'll touch on that. Let's talk about the different types of fasting first.
Okay.
Because it depends how deep you want to go into it. Some people believe that anything other than water is a foreign substance, and depending what you're trying to achieve with this intermittent fasting, might get in the way. But
Right.
if you're
So
doing,
there's different extreme, like there's probably extremists for intermittent fasting than just water only, and some people maybe not even water.
yeah,
The
exactly.
crazies.
Exactly. So first type of fast is the overnight fast, which everybody does. When you sleep, you don't eat. The next type
Unless
of
you're Hal.
yeah, unless you're out.
He has some snacks beside the bed.
I can't go for more than 2 hours without eating, day or night.
Cheetos in the middle of the night for you.
Nah,
You
it's
wake
bad.
up with those orange sticky fingers.
Hummus and crackers.
Is that your little weakness at night? Is it?
Yeah, I've
Hummus
got some
and
in the
crackers.
fridge in the office.
So odd.
Yeah.
Hummus. I do like a bit of hummus and crackers. So
I do,
overnight
but
fast.
I like my sleep as well.
Overnight fast, which we all do to a certain degree, at least however long we sleep, 6 to 8 hours.
Exactly, yeah. And then I guess extending this is where this idea of intermittent fasting, which is really a poor term for intermittent fasting. It's the true term is time restricted eating or time restricted feeding, right? You're restricting the time interval with which you eat. So one way to do this, the best way to do this is just to extend your overnight fast. You could extend it in the morning, eat your first meal of the day much later, or you can extend it in the evening before you go to sleep and eat your last meal much earlier.
So a lot of these intermittent fasts, they call it by how long you're fasting and how long the window is of eating. So the most popular one I've heard of these days is like a 16 and 8.
Exactly. So, typically you'd have a 12-hour fast, just normally, right? So eat dinner 7 p.m., wake up at 7 a.m., have some breakfast, right? That's about normal for a lot of people.
No, it's not.
For normal people, Hal.
My apologies.
But then, extending this, so say you have your last meal at 8 p.m., you're not going to eat until 12 the next day,
Right.
right? So basically you skip breakfast and, feel hungry for a few hours until that first meal at midday. So from 8 p.m. till 12, that's a 16-hour fast. Then you have an 8-hour window to within which you eat. So, that's where this term comes from, 16-8. People manipulate this and can have, shorter or longer eating windows. If you have a longer eating window, typically less less of a fast, you know.
So in that 8-hour window where you are eating, or however long the window is, are you still trying to consume the same amount of calories that you would if you were just to eat normally throughout the day? Like, is that the idea, or is it to actually help restrict calories?
Well,
by skipping a meal?
It depends what you're trying to achieve, right? So for some people who are looking to maintain their weight, the idea would be to consume the same amount of calories in that 8 hours that you would, you know, alternatively throughout the day. What it does though is, you know, when they've tracked people on these intermittent fasting diets, without tracking their calories, people tend to eat less calories in this 8-hour window because you're just eating for a shorter period of the day. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's probably the most popular form of intermittent fasting, this time-restricted eating or time-restricted feeding. There's a few other types though.
Is that really a fast? 16 hours?
Have you tried it?
I haven't. Like, my stomach's rumbling, and it is something I do want to try, and I know you've tried it. But I'm thinking, like, a true fast. Is 16 hours really enough? Like, there's a lot of people that I know just skip breakfast, and then the actual first meal they have is lunch. There's a lot that just do that out of being busy or not being hungry first thing in the morning. There's a lot of people that just aren't hungry.
So is it a true fast? Well, it's a daily fast. We can call it that.
It's a week fast, I reckon.
Yeah. Well,
introductory. Maybe we call it introductory. Fast.
So, you know, a good way to ease into intermittent fasting is to slowly change this window, right? So say you can start with 14 hours.
Yeah.
You know, so eat dinner at 8 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
You can eat your first meal by 10 a.m. Pretty easy to do, right?
Easy.
Extend that a couple hours, you know. So 8 p.m. you can eat at 12 the next day. When I was playing with intermittent fasting, I was doing this daily fast, and I went up from 8 p.m. dinner to an 18:6 window. So 2 p.m. was my first meal.
Right.
And, you know, that's only a 6-hour eating window. And it's quite hard to eat your daily calories in 6 hours. So it actually imparts a bigger caloric deficit.
So when you are in that 8-hour window or however long the window is when you are eating, are you still trying to spread your... Obviously, you're not able to get the amount of meals in that you normally would. Like, a lot of people in sports are sort of eating anywhere between 3 to 6 meals a day, sometimes even more. So you're just having less meals, more calories within those meals?
Yeah, so typically they are larger meals, but, you know, there's only so much you can eat in one window, and I mean in one sitting. And some people that do these extreme fasts of, say, 20 hours and 4-hour window, you're going to struggle to fit 3 meals in 4 hours.
Yeah.
Right? Unless you're Hal.
Constantly grazing.
3 meals in 1 hour, easy.
It's like a cow.
Exactly. So, you know, depending on this window, it's going to be a bit different. But there are other ways to fast, not just this daily fast. Mm-hmm. There's also alternate day fasting. So, you know, this is where you add a 24-hour fast, for example, a couple times a week.
Right. And would you structure those 24-hour fasts on days that you're not training or participating in any sports?
Ideally, you would.
And how would they... Because I've considered this, right? Like, Sunday's a great day for me to fast because it's just a family day. You know, I'm always sort of active. I'm occupied anyway. And the thought of cooking and making meals is actually a hindrance. The day before, though, I'm training legs.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm always concerned about getting enough protein the following day, obviously for recovery, for when I get back into my training on the Monday and ready to go again for the week. Is that a factor? Or I know you're always saying sort of total calorie intake, total macro intake throughout a whole week you should really look at rather than sort of day and time. So would that be an issue, like having a fast the day after a really intense training session?
No. So, it is an issue, but it's something that's not specifically studied that well to know that much about. You know, we know that you do need protein after training to recover correctly, but there are all these other benefits that are happening within your body during this fast, especially a prolonged fast, like a full day fast. That's when you experience more of these other benefits, and you know, there's benefits to inflammation and the recovery process itself. The thing is, exercise actually amplifies the effects of fasting on your body. So to answer whether it's good to do a full day fast after a heavy leg session, when I was doing it, what I found made a big difference to my recovery and performance in the gym was including sufficient protein in my eating window. Right. So I actually lost a bit of strength when I was experimenting with this. You know, something I was squatting 185 by 5 at the time, which is, you know,
pathetic. Yep.
Pretty easy for me usually, right? But when I was doing this intermittent fast, and you know, usually on a calorie deficit, you'll you'll be a bit weaker anyway.
So you weren't consuming the same amount of calories that you normally were?
I wasn't specifically tracking it, but because I was just trying to play with time restriction rather than calorie restriction.
Right.
I should have in hindsight, but I believe I was consuming less. But what I found made a big difference was actually increasing my protein during this feeding window, and then towards the end of it, I actually started having some amino acid drinks during the fast as well.
Oh, you cheated.
I cheated, but
so your strength levels dropped.
It depends what you're trying to achieve.
How much did they drop? Was it significant or was it minor? Or
it was minor. I guess the last set of 2 of the 5 sets were a lot harder than it was previously. And,
right.
I don't think I even went to the final 5 reps on some of those final sets.
Okay.
So,
did you get leaner during that period though?
Yeah. So, a lot of people do intermittent fasting for, sports performance and body composition goals. I actually did it because I was going to Bali last year.
Pure aesthetic reasons.
Purely aesthetic reasons.
Yeah.
And,
Bali bod.
I've shredded a few different ways in my life. I've tried low carb keto style. I've tried, tracking macros. So it's good to experiment with these different tools. And that's what intermittent fasting is, or time restricted feeding, is, a good tool to use. What I haven't really experimented thoroughly on are these extended fasts.
So what are some of the other fasts that we're sort of referring to here? The 24-hour alternate day?
Yeah, so alternate day fasting. So you might have actually heard of another diet called the 5-2 diet, where you don't completely fast on the days off. You just have significantly less calories on those fasting days. So it's not a pure fast per se, but you're still getting some of the benefits, particularly around the calorie restriction.
Would that be similar to like carb sort of deficit and carb loading days?
Yeah, similar principles.
Right.
Yeah. I guess the other one is prolonged fast, So this is where you fast for 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, some people do. And, there are a whole bunch of benefits in your body, which we'll talk about soon. But, it's really a mental challenge when it gets down to that level. And it's something that a lot of people won't be able to do, just dealing with these hunger pangs. Hell wouldn't last.
I think most people would struggle with a 24-hour fast, like just a one day, let alone a multiple day. Like, why the multiple day? What are some of the benefits? What starts to happen in the body? Because I know what starts happening in my body. My stomach starts rumbling, like out of control and won't stop.
Same.
Yeah.
Why are people doing these multiple day?
Well, so like you said before, there are different goals to achieve through intermittent fasting, right? So one of the things that happens in these prolonged fasts in particular is something called autophagy. So autophagy, it's a funky sounding term. Basically, it means you're killing off your weakest cells in your body. So think of it like a herd of buffaloes. Think of all the cells in your body like a herd of buffaloes, right? And the slowest ones get chowed up by the lions at the back. So, but actually makes the herd stronger, because together now, it's the fastest and the strongest remaining in the herd. It's kind of like that with autophagy. So once you go into this prolonged fast, you're actually eating your own body, for lack of a better term. But
it's all the shitty dead cells.
Exactly, and you're replacing and regenerating them with newer, fresher cells. And this is why people extrapolate this autophagy that's going on into prolonged life extension.
Right.
But the issue is there hasn't been enough work done on intermittent fasting to in the long term to really understand some of the things that are going on.
Would something like that still suit an older person? Just asking for a friend. Where cell production isn't happening at the same rate as maybe a younger person? Just ask for a friend.
Yeah, there'd definitely be benefits. And, when I'm an old man, this is something I'm going to practice for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And there are definitely wise old monks that have talked about this a lot. And, even reading I've read a couple of, biographies and things, and, even Gandhi and Nelson Mandela and these kind of guys who, although Gandhi got shot at a bit of a younger age, he was quite... a good example, he was quite, still sharp into his older ages, and, Nelson Mandela lived until, the 90s or whatever.
So they both employed fasting principles?
Yeah, Gandhi was a big proponent of it. So
I've heard things like where people have actually fasted for a year.
Yeah.
Is this bullshit? Like I've heard stories where monks have just gone into this state where they haven't eaten for that, you'd die, wouldn't you?
I mean, you'd probably die
Sounds like
for a year, but there
like
are some people that do very long, prolonged fasts for a number of days and a week even, and it requires tremendous mental skill, and it's possible.
Yeah.
So, but the question is, are these life extension benefits coming from a calorie restriction, which we know can improve life extension, or is it coming from this autophagy and these other metabolic things that are happening? So one of the things that happens when you're in intermittent fasting is, currently with this constant refeeding, we're trained to run on glucose, right? Mm-hmm. And we talked about this on the keto episode that when you're in ketosis, your body's producing ketones. It's converting fat into energy, and you're running on a different fuel source. What happens in intermittent fasting is you run on ketones, so you're not relying on this glucose dependency that you typically do with constant refeedings. So what intermittent fasting does is actually triggers something called metabolic flexibility, which is your ability to switch between these two main fuel sources, glucose dependent or ketone dependent.
Right.
So intermittent fasting is intimately related to the ketogenic diet because you're running on the same fuel source. But probably another reason why it's so popular, because keto is so popular and people are extending it. A cool way to do intermittent fasting is, employing some keto principles into your refeeding window. So you can do full ketogenic intermittent fast, which some people have done with good success.
So what, utilizing fat as an energy source within that window?
Yeah.
Combining the two principles.
So it depends, what you're trying to achieve with this fast. But yeah.
What about for athletes? Like a prolonged fast like this, multiple days, would you be employing this in a period where you might have a week off training? And if you're not having a week off training, you're silly. You should occasionally have a week off.
Yeah.
So would this be good to do in time with that? Because I honestly couldn't imagine myself doing a multiple day fast while I'm training and doing jiu-jitsu at night. And just me as an example, and probably applies to everyone.
Well, once again, it depends what you're trying to achieve with intermittent fast. If you're trying to build muscle and perform at your best, we know eating the right foods and the right amount of protein does have a known benefit to this. If you're just doing intermittent fasting for the sake of killing off your cells, but sacrificing your performance for it, is it worth it? Probably not. But it's a tool that you can use while you're training. And if you imply fasts on your non-training days, it's really subjective as well. Some people can train fasted. Some people can wake up in the morning, go to the gym, and you're actually training fasted. In this fasted state.
Yeah, I think I've said before, I prefer to train in a somewhat fasted state. I just feel clearer and less digestive issues and things like that.
So there's a new study published, 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting because they actually looked at this question of intermittent fasting and how it affects your weight loss and your metabolic your metabolic
process.
state.
Yeah,
right?
state. Yep.
So 116 people they studied in America, right? Intermittent fasting. So they had one group doing intermittent fasting, one group doing caloric restriction. Counting the calories. Tried and tested way of losing fat versus intermittent fasting, novel way to play around with calorie restriction. The intermittent fasting group did lose a bit more weight, so 1.17% versus 0.75% in the calorie restricted group. So this was over 12 weeks. But the intermittent fasting group actually recorded less steps. So decreased activity while doing intermittent fasting versus this caloric restriction, where you might just be constant feeding, but, restricting the total amount of calories that you eat.
So why did they do less steps? Was that a planned thing, or they just didn't feel like doing as many steps?
That was not a planned thing. That was just an observation from the study, is that they did significantly less steps. And also, they lost more lean body mass than the caloric restriction group.
Right. So they did lose some muscle mass.
Yeah. So it was pretty interesting. But
so why would you do this? It's sounding purely like weight loss to me. Like from a sports performance perspective,
yeah,
unless you've got some sort of digestional issues. I know that's why, like we mentioned George St. Pierre before, a famous MMA fighter from the UFC. He started to employ these longer fasts because of some digestional issues that he was having as he was trying to put on weight to go up a weight class.
Yeah.
And he found that this was a way to help with that, to give the digestive system a break and sort of give it a bit of a reset. So other than sort of weight loss, digestive, and maybe anti-aging, like if you were purely focused on sports performance, the prolonged fast may not be the way to go. You'd probably go with like a 16 and 8 sort of setup.
Exactly, yeah. And, making sure that the principles still do apply. What you're trying to achieve, the base of the pyramid, your total daily calorie intake, your macronutrients, like we said, timing is the tip of the pyramid. What you take in your feeding windows still applies, even if you're implementing some kind of time restriction.
What if you're trying to your intake of calories in that window? Say you're eating 2 meals, right, or 3 meals, and the intake of calories in each of those meals is significantly more than what you would have done previously over sort of spread out.
Yeah.
Is that affecting things like your insulin levels and the amount of protein that you can actually...
Well, so that same study that we just talked about, the one that was published 2 weeks ago, they actually try to assess some of these metabolic parameters, right? So there's no difference in the fasting insulin levels between the calorie restricted group and the intermittent fasting group. Kind of bust that myth that, your fasting insulin levels are going to be a bit different. No difference in fasting glucose levels between the two groups as well. No difference in hemoglobin A1C, which is a marker of insulin sensitivity. So without going into too much of what insulin does, your sensitivity to insulin is going to affect your ability to deposit nutrients and burn fat as well. And also no difference in resting metabolic rate. So a few myths busted with that study, but once again, it was like a self-reported study where they tracked them on an app, and it was only 16-8 fast, where you're not maybe getting the full effects of a prolonged fast.
So this study's just come out.
Yep.
Has there been any controversy in the way it was conducted, or is there any sort of talk online about this study and the results? Have you got?
Well, like every study, it's just one snapshot of something that can happen, and it was basically tracking people all over the United States, and how well do you trust these people? Did everybody adhere to the fast, correctly? It's very easy to cheat. If you get hungry, just have a couple crackers. Then obviously, you might just be in the same camp as somebody that's doing a normal calorie restriction if you're cheating a bit. But we have to assume that it was a good study, and this is just one of the findings. But going back to the original paper from December 2019, right? So this is from New England Journal of Medicine, right? So this is some of the benefits that happens during your intermittent fast: increased ketones, increased mitochondrial stress resistance, increased antioxidant defenses, increased autophagy, which we just talked about, increased DNA repair, decreased insulin, decreased mTOR, which is a trigger muscle protein synthesis, and decreased protein synthesis. So during the fast, you actually have decreased synthesis, right?
That's a bad thing, though.
It is a bad thing, but it depends what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Okay.
Once again, and if if all things being equal, if you have sufficient protein in your eating window, there are heaps of benefits in there.
What was what did it touch on with the DNA?
So increased DNA repair. So that's one of the big benefits of it is there's potential implications in cancer and stuff that I'm not too familiar with, but that's where a lot of the research interest is at the moment.
DNA repair and antioxidant.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of benefits, to your metabolic and cellular health that are hypothesized to intermittent fasting that just haven't been studied yet. So we can't really make these kind of conclusions yet.
So there'll be a lot more studies coming up in the next few years, definitely, as they start to see more and more benefits. They'll trial it on more and more people, and more and more studies.
So outside of sports performance, it's it is for this longevity benefit and the decreased occurrence of diseases like diabetes, cancer, obesity. These are the things that are being studied at the moment, and where there's a lot of hypothesis that intermittent fasting can be a powerful tool. There, yeah.
Well, it still applies to everyone, whether you're into sports performance or not. All of those things like decreased chances of cancer and longevity, that applies to everyone. Is this something like that you would recommend? Like, I know you're not sort of making any recommendations, you're not a doctor or anything, But like, would you recommend that people try this?
I 100% recommend people try this. And, you know, if anything else, you know, you're probably going to get a calorie deficit. So, you know, make sure you're trying to use it at the same time. Like you said, you know, just doing a fast for the sake of doing a fast because it's trendy and you're getting these things. Just remember that it might come at the cost of, you know, some potential, you know, protein synthesis.
That's the only reason you did the fast, is so you could tell people that you were fasting, isn't it?
No. You know, I did for abs. It's a different reason.
So there are different extreme levels of what fasting means.
Yeah.
So water's generally accepted as okay on a fast.
Yeah.
Coffee?
Coffee. So this is probably like one of the biggest questions, you know, what can I have when I'm fasting?
Yeah.
Well, number one, you can have water, right? And it depends how extreme into the fast you want to go, right?
Water fills you up.
It does, but, you know, when you go to sleep, part of the theories of intermittent fasting is that you get this gut rest, right? Food and anything that you have, any external substance apart from water, is a metabolic stress, right? Your body has to ramp up some kind of, you know, metabolic processes to process the food that you're eating, and, you know, that applies to any foreign substance, caffeine, amino acids, you know, a lot of these things, right? So one of the benefits of fasting is when you're not eating, when you're resting, your liver enzymes get to
here we go.
Take a rest,
This is
yeah.
Dhiren
So-
trying to not get too technical with us so we understand what's happening.
Yeah, so basically the first thing that you put in your mouth every day activates all these metabolic processes in your body, right? So
Sort of kickstarts the system, right?
exactly. So, you know, activates all these liver enzymes, activates your gut, you know, all these other things that are happening, and that becomes, you know, ingrained into your circadian rhythm, you know. So it takes a little bit of time for you to, you know, for your body to adapt, and, you know, for your enzymes to be activated and things that throughout the day. So as you adapt to this fast, you're getting to these periods where, you know, your liver enzymes aren't activated, and, you know, you are getting this autophagy of, you know, killing the weaker cells in the herd, like we kind of just talked about.
How long does that take to start to occur? Is that sort of multiple days, multiple weeks, or is that just happening from day one? If you've fasted from day one,
Yeah.
is it starting to kill off cells instantly?
That's something that, you know, it's still under research, and, you know, some of the latest things that I've been reading and listening to is you know, some of the benefits only happen after about a year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the fat loss benefits are, you know, something you experience straight away, but, you know, some of the longer term benefits do take a little bit of while for your metabolic adaptation to occur.
Right. So this is something that you could safely employ for periods of a year and longer. It's not like a lot of people that are on the keto diet sort of shift in and out. They might do a few months or 6 months, and then they'll jump off it for a bit.
Yeah.
So intermittent fasting is something that you can employ ongoing.
Exactly. So
Safely.
I think it's a really useful tool, right? And remember that it's a tool. It's you could implement it into your way of life, you know, easily if you're structuring everything correctly, and, you know, if you want to be in this, you know, calorie deficit, or you know, this reduced calorie compared to a constant feeding. But, you know, what you can do is you can increase what you're eating in the eating window, right? So there's another study, a mice study, right? So they fasted these mice.
This would be relevant to you, Hal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Giant mice,
If
mouse.
you say so.
Oh, I thought he was a rat.
Yeah.
What did I do?
Sorry. So these mice, they fasted for 16 hours. Then they were allowed to eat anything they want in this 8-hour window, right? And think about
Anything they want.
anything they want. So all the cheese.
Or do they just like
Was
lay
there
out a
a-
platter? Anything you want.
No, they had to order from the menu.
Yeah, right.
Oh, if you put a mouse in front of some food, it's going to eat it. All right? That's what they do.
Yeah.
So anything they want for 8 hours. They couldn't gain weight. Even in this maximum refeed state, they couldn't gain weight. And they actually gained more muscle mass, the fasting group in mice.
Really?
What?
Yeah, so it's kind of like, you know,
So it's a little
counterintuitive.
bit, it's a little bit opposite to the human trials so far.
Exactly. So there's a few mechanisms that are going on that nobody quite understands in intermittent fasting, right? So there are all these benefits to your health and longevity, but, you know, what are the implications for sports and muscle mass? You know, it's still unclear.
Mm.
Yeah.
Still early days then, I guess.
Yeah, but, you know, our ancestors did it, like I said, and, you know, if you aren't able to function correctly on a fast, you'd be dead. You know, like you know, think back to cavemen. They weren't eating 3 meals a day.
Yeah, I think like a recent time, it's not so recent, but it's become sort of common within the sports industry that you eat every 2 to 3 hours throughout the day. A lot of this science sort of basically makes that out to just be bullshit.
Yeah.
Really.
Well,
you don't need to eat that frequently.
Well, it depends what you're trying to do. Again, like if you're trying to gain muscle mass, you're going to want to have this amino acid availability to your muscle throughout the day. So, that's kind of one of the reasons why I probably lost a bit of strength is because.
But I think I was more saying it from a metabolism point of view, where eat more frequently as it boosts your metabolism. Like when you're trying to lose fat, you're sort of you should be snacking to keep your metabolism fast. Like that's obviously just...
Yeah, well, so that's kind of one of the things that still needs to be determined, how intermittent fasting affects your metabolic rate compared to, a normal traditional diet. And, in that latest study, the one with 116 people, there was no difference in metabolic rate between the two groups. But that was only over 12 weeks, and it was only, on a self-reported diet. So there are some criticisms about it, but,
Yeah. So what can you eat or what can you consume during that fast period? So water's in, coffee. I know you used to come in and have black coffees occasionally. Are they allowed?
Yeah, so it depends. Some people that are doing this for this gut rest benefits, they don't want anything else but water. Even coffee is going to trigger some kind of metabolic processes within your body. But if you're doing it for weight loss, caffeine's actually gonna help. If you're doing it solely for this caloric deficit, caffeine, some black coffee during your fast is going to help a lot.
Okay, and what about
One of the things though is if you're not a coffee drinker, probably don't just start drinking black coffee in your fasting period, right? It's unnecessary. But if you are a coffee drinker, stripping out food and stripping out coffee at the same time is a lot to handle. It's like a 1-2 punch. You're gonna become a caffeine junkie and you're gonna be hungry.
So maybe ease into it.
Yeah.
Keep the coffee in for a while and then eventually try to dump the coffee and see how you feel after that.
Exactly. And I think easing into it is a big key, because I've played with this a couple of times and starting the fast is very hard, you get super hungry, right? So...
Especially if you're accustomed to eating every few hours like most people in sports would be.
Exactly. So what I found really useful was to do like a week of quite low carb eating and then go into an intermittent fast because, you're kind of already practicing with some kind of restriction, macronutrient restriction. But it just kind of preps you mentally to go into this.
The more we talk about this, I'm starving.
Yeah.
I'm so hungry right now.
Yeah.
The more I talk about being hungry,
well,
that has to be a mental part of it.
It is. And I think that's probably one of, if not, the biggest benefit is, this primal feeling of hunger, and it's not controlling you. You're controlling your hunger. I think we talked about this term.
So make hunger your bitch.
Exactly. Equanimity, right? We talked about this term before, the ability to stay calm, despite an external pressure.
Can't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well.
No, it makes sense. It's good. Like it's great for the body, but it's also a bit of a mind game as well. It can help train your mind.
Exactly.
And help you realize you don't actually... It's okay to skip a meal. It's okay to skip a couple of meals. You're going to survive.
Yeah. How many people go their entire lives without really even, feeling a little bit of hunger?
I know.
A lot of people.
Most people.
When I was growing up, if you,
on the hungry streets of South Africa.
No. Everybody's like, you're hungry. This boy hasn't eaten for 3 hours. Well, somebody get him some food.
Well, that's parents these days, and especially with my kids. Like you're constantly asking them, you hungry? Do you want something? Like we just pamper. Yeah. I don't think they've ever gone hungry, and if they do say I'm hungry, it's a surprise these days because we're just force feeding our kids. You get chubby little kids.
Yeah, and you look at even Hal. Hal lives better than kings of 100 years ago.
Thank you.
I'm talking about your food, but
treat yourself.
Hal's got this excess, all these healthy foods, never feeling hungry. Even the kings and queens of 100 years ago probably did experience some kind of hunger and don't live as well as we do today.
Yeah, didn't have 2-minute noodles back then.
Exactly.
Oh, that's the uni diet, mate.
Sure is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty interesting.
So what about free-form amino acids?
Yeah. So
you're not actually digesting them, but obviously they're...
Well, they do get processed by your liver as well. So you are triggering this, stopping this gut rest and triggering this enzymes to be activated. But, when I was doing it, specifically for the goal of a calorie deficit, I started including electrolytes and amino acids into my into a little drink that I was drinking while I was fasting. Sorry.
Right, and how far in before you started to utilize that? So obviously got to the point where you were just going, okay, I'm losing muscle, I'm losing strength. I need to do something about it.
Yeah, probably about 4 weeks in, I would say. Then I started tweaking it. I really wanted to experience just water-only fast. But, there are those extremes. So if you want to do it for all these metabolic benefits, go water-only. If you want to do it for fat loss, maybe throw in some caffeine if that's what you're used to. Because it's going to be very hard to go through this hunger and this caffeine withdrawal. If you, trying to gain strength and, trying to, optimize your... trying to get some of these benefits from intermittent fasting, but don't really want to compromise your performance, then probably best to include things like electrolytes and amino acids during your fasting window. Mm-hmm. Although then it becomes not a pure fast. Yeah, one of the other considerations is water, right? So while you're fasting, water is the most important thing, right? Like it's like your savior. It kind of like suppresses your appetite a little bit, because something's going down your throat. But food contains a lot of water. So a lot of people that go through prolonged fasts don't really realize how much water food contains. And, you might just be drinking what you're normally drinking, but you kind of have to compensate for all the water that's not coming in through food. And it's a lot that you do get through food.
So you're recommending people should up their water intake on an intermittent fast? Yeah.
So, if you drink 4 liters a day normally, and you're drinking 4 liters a day on a fast, it's probably a good benchmark that you probably need to drink a bit more. The exact percentage, it's kind of hard to know, but because you're also during a fast, your electrolyte levels are going to be a bit depleted as well.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
So so you did the 16 and 8. Have you ever gone a full day without any food whatsoever?
I've done some 40-hour fast. That's probably the longest.
40-hour famine. Do they still have that?
I used to do that. That's why I did 40 hours recently, because I did it as a kid. It was easy.
Yeah. But you're allowed lollies.
It wasn't just food. You could do anything. You could do 40 hours without screens. You could do 40 hours.
Is that what it turned into?
You could do. People in my school did 40 hours without exercise. Because it's raising money, so you can choose the thing that you're giving up.
When I was a kid back in the 1920s, it was purely food.
Yeah, in New Zealand, when I did it, it was food or technology.
Technology that has been included.
Yeah, well, there's no technology.
I reckon people would struggle more with technology these days than the food part of it.
That's why they did it, but also because it was a fundraiser. It wasn't meant for your personal.
Well, when Ross was a kid, technology was rocks. So
no rocks, 40 hours.
I ate the rocks. That's how I got around it.
I'm not surprised.
But I actually remember, that's brought back some memories. It's probably the only time I have done a fast, and I struggled as a little chubby kid.
I think a lot of people in this part of the world do have those kind of memories of the 40-hour famine, and, you can do it.
Yeah.
And just the challenge of fasting is quite good. You kind of feel primal. You feel like, okay, I'm kind of like tapping into some caveman shit that's been going on inside my body for a little while.
I always think that, and I think, it's good to get back to those sort of caveman times. And I think, those guys are probably scrawny little hairy things that lived till they were 30, and why would I want to be that guy?
Yeah, true. That's the old the old argument against paleo. But
I think the principles are good though.
Yeah. So
what we're eating compared to what they're eating is
exactly. So also one of the things I feel in intermittent fasting is because you're kind of in this restricted mindset. You tend to eat healthier in your eating window because you don't want to waste.
You don't want to blow it.
You feel like, I don't know if it's just me, but you feel like you don't have those same cravings for carbs and sugars that, you normally do.
Well, if you've gone through this restricted period and you've done the hard work, you don't want to go and blow it with shitty food while you're actually in that window. Exactly. You want to eat clean.
Exactly. And, it is a challenge, particularly if you're doing a 16-8 fast, for example. Those last 2 hours are the challenge.
Are they?
The rest of it's pretty easy. It's just...
is that because you start to get... It's like that principle when you need to go to the toilet, and the closer you get to the toilet, you're just struggling to hang on, but you've been hanging on for 3 hours. Yeah, it's like the closer you get to that eating time, the harder it becomes mentally. You're almost there.
But as soon as you get there, it's like, I probably could have had this for another 10 minutes if I really needed to.
That's it.
One of the other things is it's very hard to start from a food bender. I've actually tried and failed intermittent fasting before as well. What do
you mean, like a food bender? Like if you've been eating a few days, just high calories and crap and...
Good example, Christmas, New Year's time, drinking, eating, all this nonsense that you're filling your body with that, you have to do at that time of year because, social.
Well, this is relevant to me right now. I've just had sort of 2 weeks holiday and I've been away and I haven't been, like, I'm a creature of routine. As soon as I get out of that, my inner fat kid comes out. And I was a little fat kid at one point. So I'm allowed to say that. And I'm already noticing, like yesterday and today, I've tried to really start to clean things up again. And it feels like I'm starving because I've been eating more relaxed for 2 weeks straight every day.
Yeah, I guess, your baseline calorie intake's probably increased, and now you're trying to go to a deficit on what you were before. It's probably, an even bigger drop. But
so you're saying sort of ease into it, maybe drop the carbs a little bit for a week or two leading into it.
So, although I've successfully done intermittent fasting in the past, I tried to do it after this Christmas, New Year's period, and I failed. I just couldn't do it. I was just like, nah, not happening. Because I've just been eating and, misbehaving a little bit, and I just couldn't stick to the fast. Like, I was just too weak. So it is good to kind of prep yourself with a little bit of a low carb week or some kind of restricted week before heading into it.
If you are doing the traditional 16 and 8, the modern sort of 16 and 8 intermittent fast or restricted eating, when would you be recommending people train? Within that within the fasted period, or
no? I recommend training
in the window of eating. In
the window of eating, or most importantly, where you can get protein immediately after training. Mm-hmm. So I was training. So I was doing the morning fast, let's call it that. So you extend your fast in the morning, and training in the afternoon. So I was able to get in a nice big dinner after training, because that post workout protein is still quite important, and probably even more so in an intermittent fast.
That seems to be the most popular one, where it's the morning fast.
Yeah,
I'd be interested to speak to a few people that are trying an afternoon. Like your last meal is at 2 p.m.
Yeah. Well, I know a few people that have tried that and then tried morning training as well.
Yeah.
It is very hard to do because you do feel quite flat, but it's possible.
Yeah. So it doesn't really matter the time at which you do it. It's more the window of time in which you choose.
Well, if you want to perform and within your training, and also so if you look at fueling your training, you want to have kind of a pre-workout meal, so you've got amino acid availability and things like that in your body while you're training, and also that access to protein and carbohydrates immediately after training to get that refeeding and optimize recovery. So if you can fit your training within your eating window, that's good. If you can't, if you only have a 4-hour eating window, it's subjective and it really depends on the person. But if you're training in a glycogen depleted state, which is what you're going to be on when you're fasting, make sure you have sufficient protein because you can break down your muscles.
Mate, I think you've summarised it all perfectly. Is there anything else you want to cover off? Is there anything interesting? I know you've come armed with heaps of notes today because this is sort of close to what you've done in the past.
So one of the things I didn't really mention, which I kind of touched on, was sodium. So when you're fasting, your body's excreting sodium at a much faster rate.
Really?
Yes.
So is that why you incorporated some electrolytes as well?
Exactly. So and your sodium intake from food is a lot lower because you're not constantly getting sodium because most food contains salt throughout the day. So I think paying attention to sodium, water, and electrolytes is going to be quite important.
Can you put some sort of Himalayan rock salt in your water, or is that considered a no-no?
You can, but once again, if it's that extreme. If you're trying to go full extreme and get all the benefits, what a little bit of salt here and there does is probably not going to undo a lot of those.
What would you add some salt to those meals or just?
I started drinking the electrolytes during my fasting window. So remember, I switched to electrolytes and amino acids just to optimize my fast. There are some cool novelty interesting facts about intermittent fasting.
Okay, fire away.
Paracetamol toxicity is more common in people who are fasting. Because
so if you're fasting and you're taking Panadol, or let's not mention any brands, paracetamol, higher chance of toxicity.
Yeah. Because I guess your liver enzymes aren't as activated to process this this paracetamol, and
so that's definitely an important factor to consider.
Yeah. So taking medication.
What about if you're getting like hunger headaches and stuff like that? You're in a real situation then, aren't you?
Well, I always recommend taking that kind of medicine with food.
Exactly.
I know. Yep.
So another thing, alternate day fasting was studied in asthma and obesity, and it's shown to actually reduce asthma and obesity with alternate day fasting. This full day fast.
Really?
Yeah.
Obesity makes sense.
Yeah.
The asthma part, like, where's the link there?
Well,
is it inflammation?
Exactly. So there's a whole question about the impact of intermittent fasting on inflammation and all these inflammatory processes within your body, and that affects conditions like asthma, conditions like eczema and things like that.
Is that and this is just me just brainstorming, like, is that because you're actually giving your gut a chance to just sort of reset or recover or take a break to get back to its sort of preferred or normal state without constantly loading it with food? Or?
Exactly. And you think about food. Food is a metabolic stress. Food and exercise are stresses to your body that you adapt to exercise to get better at handling the stress. Likewise, your body adapts to the food that you're putting in to adapt to this metabolic stress that you're giving it. But if you give your body and your gut a rest, there are benefits that can come from that.
That's interesting for asthma.
Yeah, I'm an asthmatic, so...
Yeah, I was as a child and grew out of it. But yeah, that's so interesting. I know diet was super important for asthmatics.
Yeah, so I think that's about it.
Yeah, I think you've covered heaps. Like, I've learnt heaps. I didn't really... I've obviously knew that you were doing it, and I've spoken to a lot of people, and so I knew the basic principles of intermittent fasting, but I think you've covered it beautifully today.
Cool. Yeah, and there's still some, unanswered questions. Do people improve their metabolic flexibility during long-term intermittent fasting or time-restricted feeding?
More studies needed.
More studies needed. How does your ketone levels change over time? Like when you're ketogenic diet, you know that your blood ketones tend to get higher the longer you're on the ketogenic diet. Is it the same for intermittent fasting? Does a ketogenic diet mimic the effects of intermittent fasting, or the other way around? Does intermittent fasting mimic some of the benefits of the ketogenic diet? Some of these questions still need to be answered. And what works better, keto or intermittent fasting for running your body on a ketogenic diet? Is it better to have this low carb, high fat diet consistently, or is it better to have this time restricted feeding where you're forced to run on ketones? And
I think an intermittent fast, just having done the keto diet for a long period of time, like the sound of an intermittent fasting style diet is definitely, I think the long-term approach would be much easier than trying to maintain a keto diet for long periods of time.
Yeah. And the good thing about time restricted eating is it does change your circadian rhythm as well, and when you adapt to it, it becomes easy.
Mm-hmm.
You forget that you're even fasting, and yeah, it's definitely a great tool to play around with.
Beautiful.
Cool. Any questions, Hal?
Well, if anyone's got any questions on intermittent fasting, hit us up.
Yeah.
Send any emails to podcast@musashi.com or via social media, and we'll follow up. What else is what do we got, Hal? What's up next?
We have some sports news.
Ooh.
Sports news.
Let's get into it.
This one, hot off the press.
Hot.
The LA Lakers have just won the NBA title for 2020.
It won't be hot off the press by the time we air this episode, but there you go.
Yeah.
LeBron James, 4 rings, is it?
Yeah, and 4 Finals MVPs.
What was the final score?
He got Finals MVP as well?
He did. It was 106-86, I think.
Flogging.
Yeah, crazy. But, Lakers had some extra motivation this year, doing it for Kobe, wearing the Mamba jerseys. I have good memories of Rondo playing against the Lakers back in the day. And, he was like quite a fierce rival of Kobe's in some of these finals. And, now he's done it for the Lakers in the Lakers jersey.
Well, they didn't win it in the Mamba jerseys.
Yeah, well, yeah.
That's pretty cool and good for everyone in LA at the moment.
Yeah.
Because that state is, California's still on like major lockdown and
fires.
Yeah, what a shitty time they've had over the last 6 months. So that's good to win that. Good for morale.
Yes.
Everybody thought it was going to be the Clippers as well.
I know, since the beginning of the season. Yeah. So at least one LA team won.
Yeah.
In other news, Conor McGregor has agreed to fight Dustin Poirer.
He's pronounced that pretty well.
Yeah.
On one condition. Do you know what the condition is?
That it happens this year?
Yeah.
Yeah. Saw this. Obviously no bout agreement signed yet, but they've both sort of come out and said on social media they're talking to each other on social, and they've both agreed to it. And I think Conor's also agreed to donate $500K out of his fight purse to Dustin Poirier's fight he's got a foundation, a charity, his own charity. So I think Conor's agreed to donate to that.
Very nice of him.
This fight actually makes a lot of sense.
But
like they're both ranked.
They've fought before.
They have fought before, and a lot of people probably don't know that. And it was a long time ago. Conor.
Yeah. And that's where Mystic Mac was born, in his famous Octagon speech.
He predicts these things.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a much different fight this time around. I actually think, look at Dustin, the last fights he's had, Khabib, Dan Hooker.
Yeah.
He's a completely different fighter than the last time they fought, and this will be super interesting. But the fight actually makes sense from a rankings perspective, and also for a shot at the winner of Khabib and Justin Gaethje, which is coming up soon too.
Yeah, super excited for this fight, and I think the styles are going to match up really nicely.
Yeah, I think it'll be a great fight, and if they both bring their A game, it's going to be super exciting.
Yeah, and Dustin Poirer was saying, some of the charity work, setting up gyms and hard to reach neighborhoods and stuff like that. So
cool. Pumped for it.
Good.
Whether it actually happens or not is another thing.
Yeah.
A lot of these fights that I've been talking about lately are exciting, but for some reason or another, usually pay prevents the fights from taking place.
Yeah, we'll figure something out. Otherwise, Michael Jennings has tested positive for banned substances.
This came out, yesterday?
No, it came out the morning of the game on Saturday. Man, it was crazy. I was a little bit excited for this game. Parramatta versus the Rabbitohs.
Yeah,
the morning of the game.
Jennings from Parramatta, and he has tested positive for
Ligandrol, also known as LGD 4033.
So this was one of the. What do they classify it as? It's a
SARM, selective androgen receptor modulator. One of the new testosterone mimicking agents, and quite a popular drug for doping. It's oral only. Obviously, it's actually the same substance that the Australian swimmer Shayna Jack tested positive for. I
would say a lot of athletes and NRL athletes are using. So I don't think he's the only one. I'd like to see some more stricter testing.
Yeah.
And just see what comes. You don't hear much of drug testing in NRL these days. It's sort of so random and sporadic. But that was crazy. It makes me think when you hear things like that, especially this time of the year, was there a little tip off?
And also,
let's talk conspiracy here.
Well, his brother Brandon Jennings, he had a pretty good game as well. So
Brandon Jennings.
Oh no, we're not.
Who plays for the Washington Wizards?
Yeah, no, different Jennings.
Not pointing anything.
Sorry, George Jennings.
George Jennings.
Sorry,
I did the same.
But yeah, Ligandrol, very popular doping agent at the moment. That's why
it's used recreationally too by people in the gym.
Exactly, and it's exploding in popularity. But there's a lot of safety concerns around it, and definitely a performance enhancing agent that they're getting pretty good at testing for. Because it's relatively new. Tests probably haven't been up to scratch as some of the more established doping agents, but
So he has requested a B sample be taken. And if that comes back positive, it could be potentially a 4-year ban.
Which would be the end of his career.
The end of his career, but here's my prediction. He's going to blame a supplement.
Yeah.
And we do not supply supplements to the Parramatta Eels, just say.
So, make sure if you're an athlete out there, get this Informed Sport tested supplements. We test every single batch that has this tick on it is Informed Sport tested.
It wouldn't surprise me, but I'm going to be watching that story very closely. Very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another interesting one is Israel Adesanya, who we've been talking about, and he has a bit of what appears to be gynecomastia, which is a common side effect of testosterone replacement therapy.
Yeah,
also known as doping.
And I honestly, watching the fight, I didn't notice it until I jumped on some fight forums after it.
I noticed it straight away as you were stepping in. I'm like, what is that?
I was too pumped for the fight, so I was sort of just caught up in the moment and just watching the fight. But yeah, when I jumped on the forums after it to see what everyone was saying about the fight, there was nothing really about the fight. It was all about Israel and potential gyno in one of the chest. Yeah. It was quite odd, and it was quite noticeable. There was a lot of photos there.
But it could be anything, and it's only on one side. So I think I was listening to an interview that, USADA's even going to look at some of the MRIs of this.
I think he's been fairly open. He's had some MRIs and some tests done.
He doesn't know what it is. He doesn't know where it came from. And
look, I'm skeptic. I've always got my skeptic's hat on. And
I've always on the optimistic side. I always think everybody's innocent until proven guilty. I think you're the opposite.
Yeah, they're definitely guilty until proven innocent. Something like that, mate, stands out for me as just, you're on something. Like, that just doesn't happen between one fight and another unless it's like a cyst or a growth. So I'd be interested to find out what it is. But everyone's onto it.
Well, he's been tested multiple times, and I think, he's got too much to lose at this stage of his career to do something stupid like that.
Yeah, look, we all know.
But so did Michael Jennings.
Yeah, and multiple athletes.
Yeah.
And especially in the UFC, like, we all know the testing is so stringent.
Yeah.
But there's definitely still some products that they can use out there that can beat the drug tests.
Yeah.
And but who knows? Who knows? Only he will truly know. Him and his dealer. I mean, him.
Nah, I'm going to say innocent.
I'm going to say guilty. Guilty. Heavily guilty.
I'll say definitely innocent. Because he was fighting a guy much more jacked than him, who I thought was definitely probably Paulo Costa, probably on something.
He's on something too.
Yeah. Speaking of, I guess our next
Carlos
topic.
Ulberg is getting an opportunity at a UFC contest.
Yeah, so Musashi athlete, Carlos.
Yeah.
Been with us for quite some time. The Australian listeners probably might not be familiar with him, but he's a New Zealand athlete.
Yep, fighting out of City Kickboxing. Really, really powerful, strong athlete, king of the ring, New Zealand champion, and it's going to be exciting to see how he goes in MMA. I'm sure he's going to,
He's had MMA fights before, but he's got a chance on the Dana White's Contender Series coming up in Vegas in, a few weeks' time, I think.
Yeah.
So, and he's in the middleweight division, which is interesting because he's got a world champion teammate in that division.
Yeah, and a fellow Musashi athlete in that division, Robert Whittaker, as well. So,
that's right, yeah. So,
super excited for Carlos and his debut. So hopefully he kicks some ass. Good luck.
What an awesome guy. Carlos is a great guy.
Coolest guy.
Good luck and congrats, mate.
Yeah.
Well done. We have some game picks. So I will briefly recap last week's picks. In the NRL, Dhiren took the Panthers and Ross took the Roosters. In the AFL, Dhiren took St Kilda and Ross took the Bulldogs. Ross took the Celtics, Dhiren took Miami. You both took Liverpool. And then Dhiren took Adesanya and Ross took Paul Costa. So Dhiren, while Ross, you got one right, which was Liverpool, where you both picked correctly. Dhiren got every single pick correct. So he essentially swept you.
Don't call me Mystic Mac for nothing.
Did you put any money down on this little...
I did, but I didn't win anything.
So what's in store for me? What do I have to down today?
I think you know, mate.
1 spoon of shred matrix powder.
You have picked the finest powder
with
the best taste, like passion fruit flavor that tastes amazing.
Use a spoon, mate.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You picked the deluxe powder for me, so had to return something tasty.
Next time it'll get a bit dirtier, I think.
Yeah. You can't do a whole spoon. That's
of course you can.
What is that? A proper serving size?
Doesn't matter.
It'll be fine.
Don't worry about it.
It'll be so easy. Watch this. Is that a whole? Is that enough?
We'll let you slide with that.
Yeah. Don't put it back in.
Some nice green tea extract in there. It tastes great as a drink.
You really got to breathe it in.
Yeah, I think he's enjoying it.
The taste is good.
Taste is good. Yeah.
You know what? It's actually, like when you have protein powder, just a dry scoop, it goes all sticky. This just dissolves like sherbet.
Oh, sherbet.
So that was actually a treat. Thank you very much.
Damn. Okay, next time we'll get some Carolina Reaper sauce.
Dead set though. Try that dry scoop.
Okay.
That's actually good.
Damn it. It's meant to be a punishment, but I'm going to try it after this.
Okay, this week I'm just going to recap the games. I'll get you two to call out who you're going to pick. NRL, on Saturday 17th, we have Panthers versus Rabbitohs in the prelims.
I'm going Panthers.
Rabbitohs.
Panthers on a streak.
In the AFL on Friday 16th, Port Adelaide versus Richmond.
Richmond.
I'll go Richmond.
Cool. We were going to pick Lakers versus Heat, but they've just finished.
Lakers by 20.
Yep.
LeBron to win Finals MVP.
Yep.
Okay, we'll scrap that one.
Predict these things.
Both winners now. In the EPL, we have Brighton versus Crystal Palace, a nice little rivalry.
I want to go Brighton 1-0 because our boy Matty Ryan is going to have a cracking game. I can feel it.
Okay, I'm going to go for a draw. Crystal Palace on some good form at the moment, but I still think Matty Ryan's going to have a good game. Big rivalry, so it'll be good to end it in a peaceful solution.
Very nice. We have two UFC matchups on Sunday the 25th. Khabib versus Gaethje first.
Yeah.
Who you got?
I'm gonna go Khabib. You know, everybody knows what's coming, but stopping it's another story.
I agree. I agree with you, but I'm going to go Gaethje just because he's had some awesome momentum. He's gotten better, progressively better.
I think he's got the style to beat Khabib as well.
And I actually think he's got the wrestling pedigree, the anti-wrestling pedigree as well, to not be taken down as much and to force this to be a fist fight. He's got heavy... choking on this stuff now. He's got heavy hands and can take a shot. That last fight with Tony Ferguson... That
was crazy.
I never thought I'd see anyone do that to Tony Ferguson.
No.
So I'm going to go Gaethje.
It'll be very interesting. And, you know, of course, Khabib's father passed away, so first time without him in the corner. So,
True.
Yep.
But I can't pick against that.
They're both animals.
One of the greatest of all time, Khabib.
Of course.
So that's lightweight. Middleweight, we have Whittaker versus Cannonier.
Jared Cannonier.
Yeah.
He's come down from heavyweight.
Yeah,
he's been on a streak too.
Doesn't seem to have lost much of that knockout power that he had in heavyweight, and now he's fighting guys a lot lighter.
Yeah, and so it's going to be an interesting fight. And Whittaker's just coming off a win over Till, which was a super technical sort of stand-up battle. What I liked from Whittaker's last fight was he mixed in some threats of takedowns. It seems to have sort of changed his game a bit there, the threat of takedowns. But Cannonier is actually a decent wrestler.
Yeah.
But I think he'll be looking to come in and throw bombs.
Yeah.
I think if Rob can... This isn't a main event, is it? It's a co-main.
Yeah, well, it's a 3-round because I think Rob had a short turnaround for it.
Yeah, it's a 3-round fight. If this was 5 rounds, Rob all day. 3 rounds, if he can weather the first sort of round and a half, which not too many people have recently with Cannonier, I think Rob's got it. I'm going Rob anyway.
I'm going Rob for sure. Yep. I think, Cannonier's fought some good fighters, but he's never fought, Bobby Knuckles. He's not going to be able to handle the heat, pick him apart.
Rob's highly technical. He's actually got like a really good fight IQ. He's got a super good team behind him. So, and I think quick turnaround fights are good for Rob. I think he's had a couple of fights, long layoffs. I mean, his title fight against Israel was off a long layoff. So I think I like the quick turnaround fights for Rob.
Yeah, should be good. I'm excited.
Lovely.
Super excited.
Last pick, Wallabies versus All Blacks, Sunday 14th. Second game of the Bledisloe Cup.
I think All Blacks are going to win by 20.
Well, I was watching it yesterday and I thought potentially that was what was going to happen. Wallabies were pretty good. So I'm going to go and pick against my passport and go with the Wallabies.
You are going to get grilled from everyone in New Zealand that's listening to this pick.
Don't worry, I'm really a Springbok supporter, so it's all
exposed.
That's it for picks. I'll recap these in the description on YouTube.
Sweet.
Cool.
Excellent. We have some listener questions now.
Ooh.
Okay.
Load it up real quick.
Juicy.
First from Alex Nath, who asks, how can I consume calcium if I'm lactose intolerant?
Big Alex. Eat other people's bones. No, I'm kidding. You just looked at me like are you serious?
Jesus, I'm about to walk out.
Yeah, no. I'll let Dhiren answer.
Yeah,
Dhiren's
I think lactose isn't really the hidden meaning of this question is I don't have milk. What can I have instead of calcium?
Exactly.
Rather than lactose intolerant, and there are some good vegan sources of calcium.
Does milk even have calcium these days?
It's got plenty.
Does it? Yeah. Who knows what milk is these days?
Apart from Musashi ready to drink protein shakes, which have nice 400 and something milligrams of calcium in there.
Calcium.
They're obviously milk based and have a bit of lactose.
Nice plug.
Yeah.
There are some green leafy veggies, broccoli, cabbage, okra. Okra. If you guys know bindi, it's like one of my favorite things.
Are you getting enough through those food sources though to get your daily requirements?
Well, the daily requirements of calcium are pretty high, and it's actually particularly higher for women and older women to prevent osteoporosis. But calcium from food actually has significantly better bioavailability than calcium supplements. But there's always calcium supplements. If you're lactose intolerant, just take a calcium sup.
Easy.
Yeah.
There you go.
Next one from Paul Sellers. Are there any negative side effects of creatine? Dhiren, I
Yes.
think you can answer this one.
Well, I've been on creatine basically nonstop for quite a long time, and
Same.
Had hair.
20 years.
exactly one of the theories is that creatine can actually speed up the process of balding.
I would disagree. Look at my head of hair.
Yeah. So if you have
I think you're genetically predisposed to balding, then
Yeah.
Is that sounds like bullshit?
It's
to
not
me.
completely proven, but it's something that's been observed in some.
What? How are they going to prove that? Just get a bunch of guys and give them creatine for a prolonged period of time, and like, how do you determine if someone's going to
I
get
guess there's
bald
like
or
a
not?
theoretical mechanism behind it about how it affects your DHT levels and things. But
I heard rubbing creatine into your head makes the hair grow back.
yeah, apparently there's some creatine and caffeine shampoos and stuff out there now.
Is there really?
Yeah.
But it's just bullshit.
But some of the immediate side effects of creatine are, if it's creatine.
Bloating. I know a lot of people
So
have.
creatine actually has poor water solubility, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
it's not completely dissolved in your drink, it might give you a bit of bloating. That's why our creatine is micronized. It has very small particle size to minimize that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're having some of the old school creatines out on the market, then they have bigger particle sizes, which mean they don't dissolve properly and give you a bit of bloating and potentially nausea if you're.
What else? If you're having too much creatine, it can be converted to creatinine.
So it's in water for too long as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't really call that a side effect. It's just
Isn't it? Can that be? So it's not a side effect.
Specifically, negative side effects is the question.
yeah. It's more like a marker.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
not like nobody's like, oh shit, my creatinine's high. But it's a marker of kidney health. But creatine's been shown to be pretty safe for your kidneys in the long term.
Yeah, and look, it's not one of those products where more is better either. It's
Yeah.
just take your.
Take your daily
But
creatine.
yeah, I've been
and-
using it long term for a long time, and
Yeah, heaps of benefits, and some
nothing
new,
wrong with me.
some new benefits on anti-Alzheimer's, which might help you in your later years.
Yeah. Now,
Nice.
any more listener questions?
No, that's it. Do we want to do a famous athlete mystery quote?
Fire away.
Lovely. This one is an alternative athlete, I might say.
Alternative athlete.
I might need to give you a hint later, but
Yeah.
you might not make it to the top. But if you're doing it what you love, there is much happiness there than being rich and famous.
Sounds like someone that didn't make it to the top.
It's an alternative athlete that had fun.
Alternative athlete. What do you mean by alternative? Like a hippie? No, I'm kidding.
It's not particularly.
A sport?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Oh, jeez.
Um,
Table tennis, motor racing.
I'm gonna go Magnus Carlsen, the chess champion.
Nope. it's still technically some sort of sport. It's alternative.
Oh.
WWE.
No.
Horse racing, jockey.
You have to get the athlete, not the sport. When you get the sport, you get the athlete.
Well, that's what I'm trying to. Let's narrow it down to the sport first. Can you give us the sport?
You'll get it straight away.
Oh, okay. Hang on.
Okay, I'll give you the sport.
Alternative sport.
I'll give you the race to see who gets it.
Okay.
Skateboarding.
Tony Hawk.
Oh, okay. That's a sport.
That's a
What are you
sport.
talking about?
It's an alternative sport.
That's an extreme sport.
Yeah.
Sure, mate. Okay.
Those guys are athletes.
For sure.
I never said he
100.
wasn't an athlete.
I know it is. Yeah.
The first skateboarding athlete to do a 900.
Isn't it in the Olympic Games?
Skateboarding.
I think they're adding it.
That's
It's in the
snow-
it's in the X
snowboarding.
Games.
Yeah.
That's the Winter Olympics. But
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they're adding
Same
skateboarding.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, there's your mystery athlete quote.
I know. Good one. I
Yeah,
like that one.
That was a good one.
Yeah, you got it straight away. As soon
Can
as
you skateboard?
I used to skateboard a fair bit.
Me too. I was a little skater boy at one phase.
Go back as an adult. If you ever skated as a kid, go back as an adult and try and skateboard. You watch how much you lose your center of gravity and all that sort of stuff if you haven't been doing it.
True.
Like you could rip as a kid, and I skateboarded every day as a kid, and now when I jump on one, I don't know, I
Yeah.
feel goofy, and I still
Goofy.
wakeboard and. I'm a goofy footer, actually.
Oh, nice.
But I still wakeboard
Excuse the
and
pun.
surf
Yeah.
and things like that and do that fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, skateboarding for some reason.
Nice.
There we go. Get back with your inner child and
Yeah.
jump on a skateboard.
That's it from me. I think we're ready for a Miyamoto Musashi quote.
Miyamoto Musashi quote. Okay. Are you
I
ready?
don't have the music this week. It got banned after I put on that that music from last week's
Yeah, that was
episode.
a bit too weeb.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just read it in a nice spiritual voice.
Please.
Okay. It is only through practice can you find a rhythm. Rhythm exists in everything. Even there is a rhythm in being empty. Appropriate quote, because in intermittent fasting, your stomach is empty. So, getting
You relate quotes.
That was quite a literal.
Yes, very little.
But,
Through practice,
get,
can you
um,
find a rhythm? That makes sense.
Rhythm
yeah.
exists in everything, right?
Yeah.
So, like your training, you get into the rhythm. Like your diet, you get into that regular rhythm. Now that we're back in the office, I'm not snacking on snacks in my pantry all day long, and I'm back in that daily rhythm. Things are working better for my diet in particular. But with intermittent fasting, you can get into the 16-8 rhythm, and it gets easier.
It does. How long does it take to get easier?
It depends on you. You know, it depends how resilient you are to that feeling of hunger.
How long did it take you?
I was pretty good the first time around, but then, you know, when I wasn't in the rhythm coming off this December, January Christmas food bender, struggled. So, but yeah, probably just getting into the rhythm of regular life then. Too busy to focus on the rhythm of my diet.
True. Good way to end the episode. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. If you want to submit a question, podcast@musashi.com or on social media. Leave a review on YouTube. If you want to watch our ugly heads on YouTube, you can. Otherwise, listen on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Musashi out.